Due to the Russian-Ukraine crisis, tensions continue to rise between global superpowers. There is a serious threat of World War III looming ominously on the horizon. With all this global tension, it is hard not to wonder what could happen if it all came to a head. What countries would be most affected by a potential World War III? Is it possible that some could even be completely destroyed? Join us in this video as we explore these questions and try to unravel the potential outcomes of a global conflict. The idea of World War III is a scary one, but one that world leaders have been grappling with for decades. There have been conflicts throughout history where powerful nations have tried to exert their will on smaller, weaker countries. Think Iraq and Ukraine. But those are not likely to spark a global conflict. After all, smaller nations simply do not have the resources to fight back on a global scale. So, what could cause a third world war? Some ongoing conflicts, like the tensions between India and Pakistan, or North and South Korea, have the potential to escalate into a global conflict. But so far, they have managed to avoid that outcome. The real threat, experts say, is the possibility of the world's superpowers turning on each other. Those with the heaviest and deadliest weapons confronting each other in combat will start a conflict that will reach all borders on Earth. The United States, with its NATO allies, is one of the most powerful nations in the world. On the other side, we have two equally powerful states, Russia and China, who are keen to assert their dominance on the world stage. If tensions between these superpowers continue to escalate, it is not hard to imagine a scenario where they go to war with each other. Let's take a look at the two biggest players in the game, the United States and China. Firstly, the US has been at the forefront of nuclear technology since Manhattan Project, and as a result, has the second most powerful nuclear arsenal in the world. While this might sound like a double-edged sword, it also means that the US has the ability to deter potential attackers with the threat of mutually assured destruction. Moreover, its strategic location, surrounded by oceans on either side, makes it difficult for enemies to mount a large-scale invasion. On the other hand, China's sheer size and population density make it seem like a vulnerable target in the event of a war. However, it is important to remember that China's military strength and technological capabilities have been growing rapidly in recent years. In addition to that, the country has invested heavily in its nuclear program, with the aim of building a credible nuclear deterrent. This, coupled with China's partnerships and alliances with other powerful countries, such as Russia, make it a force to be reckoned with. However, these two are not the only countries that will be safe during World War III. Let us list some more of those. One of the key factors that promise the safety of a country in a world war is its geographic location. For example, countries that are isolated or surrounded by water might have an advantage over those that share borders with other nations. Take Australia, for example. Australia might be one of the safer countries during a world war. The country is isolated from the rest of the world by water, which makes it difficult for invading forces to launch an attack. Other than this, Australia has a relatively small population compared to other major countries, which means there are fewer targets for potential attackers. Similarly, New Zealand might also be a safe haven during a world war. The country is located on the edge of the world, far from other major nations. It is also shielded by a far bigger nation, Australia. Two major regions that might be safe during a world war include South America and Africa. It is because South American countries have a history of staying neutral in global conflicts. Another fact that favors its safety during World War III is that these countries do not have any nuclear weapons. They have a military only for domestic use, so this continent might just be the safest place on Earth if a world war broke out. As for Africa, the continent has been abused for centuries by foreign powers that have taken advantage of its resources and people. However, this may also work in its favor during a potential third world war. Many countries like China are not investing heavily in African firms because of the unlimited supply of resources there. This is why most countries, especially China, will avoid breaking this bond with the resourceful Africa. Now that we have talked about some of the safer countries during a potential third world war, It is time to address the harsh reality that some nations may not fare so well. Let's face it, the devastation from a global conflict would be catastrophic, and no country would be completely safe from destruction. However, some countries may be more vulnerable than others due to a variety of factors. Hawaii and Guam, the two states in the Pacific, would be the first to fall victim to the horrors of World War III. These beautiful islands, known for their scenic beauty and tourist attractions, would be transformed into the epicenter of mass destruction. This is because they are strategically located between the United States on one side and Russia and China on the other. As a result, they would likely be caught in the crossfire of any conflict between these superpowers. Ukraine and Taiwan are two countries that could be destroyed the most during World War III. The fight in Ukraine is already underway, and it is clear that Russia is playing for keeps. If Russia decides to use its nuclear weapons, it will not just trigger a world war, but it will also destroy Ukraine in every sense. It is heartbreaking to think about the innocent lives that will be lost, the destruction of homes, and the obliteration of entire cities, all because of power struggles between the two countries. As for Taiwan, China has always had its eye on it. They view it as their own territory and have been trying to occupy it for years. It is clear that China will do a shock and awe attack, starting with the naval assault to blast Taiwan's defenses and make their way to its biggest and most resourceful cities. The thought of China's massive army and advanced weapons pitted against Taiwan's relatively smaller and weaker military is chilling. Taiwan will try to stop them, but China is powerful with better weapons, which will make it difficult for Taiwan to hold them off. If we look at the world map, it becomes clear that countries sharing a border with the Baltic Sea could be next on the list of those destroyed in World War III. Russia, with its expansionist tendencies and its dream of bringing back the old days of the Soviet Union, is likely to have its eyes set on the Baltic Sea after it potentially occupies Ukraine. Countries like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania will be the next targets for Russia. These small Baltic states do not have the military might to withstand a Russian attack. Russia's annexation of Crimea and its subsequent involvement in Ukraine's civil war serve as a reminder of its aggressive military policies. So after Ukraine, Russia would use its military power to occupy these Baltic countries. With their strategic position on the Baltic Sea, these countries could become crucial military bases in the region. If Russia occupies these countries, it would be a significant blow to the security of the entire region. The next country in danger of being destroyed is Japan. It is a country that boasts the world's third largest economy, is home to cutting-edge technology, and has a fascinating culture. But when it comes to military power, Japan's hands are tied. Due to treaties signed after World War II, Japan has renounced its right to maintain a full-fledged military. However, its neighbor China has no such qualms. The world's most populous nation has a formidable military force and has never hidden its desire to control the region. If China were to launch a nuclear attack on Japan, it would not only be a strategic move to weaken the United States' presence in the Pacific, but it would also be an act of revenge for the devastation caused by the Imperial Japan over a century ago. If this happens, Japan will be the poorest country in the world to be a victim of the world's first and second nuclear attacks. Have you ever heard of Kiribati or Nauru? These small Pacific Island countries may not be on your radar, but in the event of a war between the United States and China, they could be caught in the middle and destroyed. Along with Tuvalu, Oceania, Vanuatu, Fiji, and the Solomon Islands, a chain of other smaller countries lying in the Pacific would also inevitably be caught in the crossfire. These countries are vulnerable due to their small size and location in the Pacific, which makes them easy targets for any invading force. In the event of a Pacific War, these nations could be occupied by the first nation to reach them, as they lack the military and economic resources to defend themselves. In the Middle East, in general, could also be a hotbed of conflict in a world war. The region is already plagued by political instability and has been the site of many armed conflicts in recent years. Countries like Syria, Yemen, and Iraq would be at a particular risk due to their ongoing civil wars and fragile governments. The aftermath of World War III would lead to a significant shift in the global power structure, and Russia would be among the countries that would face the most dramatic changes. The country may never be the same as it is today. The chaos of the war would allow various ethnic groups within Russia to take advantage of the situation and strive for independence. This would lead to a more divided Russia than ever before, with several smaller nations emerging. The world would be looking for someone to hold accountable, and Russia would be at the center of the blame game. And why wouldn't it be? It started the Ukraine crisis that could trigger a world war. Moreover, Russia would also face heavy sanctions. The international community would demand reparations for its involvement in starting World War III. As a result, Russia's vast resources, including its oil and gas reserves, would be seized to pay for the damages caused by the war. Other than this, top Russian officials would face war crimes charges for their role in starting and escalating the war. While Russia would be paying for its wrongdoings, many countries will be suffering from the aftermath of the war. The global economy would be shattered, and countries would struggle to recover. It is hard to predict the full extent of the damage caused by World War III, but one thing is for sure. It would take years, if not decades, to rebuild what was lost.